First of all, I'd like to welcome everybody present here for this wonderful session today. This is from the side of K.S.Varier Ashtanga Ayurvedics Private Limited. A wholehearted welcome to all of you. This webinar series is meant to promote the awareness about Ayurveda for not only doctors, it is also for the general public as well. So we actually encourage more and more general public to join in so that they know that Ayurveda has a lot of solutions for different questions. With that, I would like to ask our Executive Director, Mr.Sasi Varier, to give a small introduction on K.S.Varier Ashtanga Ayurvedics Private Limited.
Thank you, Dr. Girish. A warm evening to all of you who have joined us today for this session on evidence-based Ayurveda. My heartfelt thanks to Rajiv ji for having accepted to enlighten us on this. I'm profoundly privileged, proudly privileged to introduce the tradition that we are in today. In 1936, our founder, my grandfather, AyurVedic K.S.Varier, started Ashtanga from a very, very humble background. A very household unit it was when it was started in 1936. K.S.Varier studied under P.S. Varier, the Vaidyaratnam P.S. Varier, the founder of Ayurvedishala Kottakkal. And in 1933, he completed his course, a certificate course, did his internship there under him. And then under his advice and mentorship, he came to Trichy, the central part of Tamil Nadu, to establish this unit. He started the unit with the medicines of Ayurvedishala, but World War II was a time then, and shipping of medicines became a big problem, and P.S. Varier advised him to start his own products. And that is how Ashtanga was born in 1936. And with this, with the blessings of his mentor, he started Ashtanga, and today we have moved a lot forward. K.S. Varier passed away in 1990 when he was 83 years old. And he had practiced till he was 81, and he was in active practice. And he was a very humble person with very humble surroundings, and he proved that he was a very efficient physician. By the time it was around 40s, in the late 40s, people from all over Tamil Nadu started visiting him for his treatment. And he slowly developed this unit of manufacturing, and we started manufacturing about 250 plus medicines. Today, we have most of them Shastric medicines or classical medicines or generic medicines as they are called, and a few of the experiential products that came out of his own practice as well as his sons. Two of his sons are physicians, Dr. Varier, who joined in 1976, and Dr. Narayan Varier or TVN Varier, who joined in 1971. So TVN Varier has put in around 50 years of practice now, and he is still working actively in the company. The organization grew steadily, and we introduced many people. I was fortunate to get introduced around 25 years back. Then his youngest daughter got introduced to the company, and now the latest addition. Before that, our MD, present MD, TVS Varier, joined us after his 26-year stint in banking, and he took a pre-retirement and came in 2011. The latest addition is, of course, Dr. Girish Varier, who has been speaking some time before now, introducing Dr. Rajiv. So this is our organization. The organization is steadily growing, and we are going into the next level of operations. We have 4 clinics in Trichy, and we have 4 clinics in Trichy where we practice pure Ayurveda. One more addition to the family is Dr. TVN Varier's son, Dr. Shyam, who has joined us recently. So this is a total picture of what we are today. I'm sure all of you are anxiously waiting for the speaker to enlighten us. I'm also anxious about this. I'm waiting to learn something new from him. So over to Dr. Girish for the rest of the proceedings.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that wonderful introduction on K.S.Varier Ashtanga Ayurvedics Private Limited. So I would like to introduce our well-known speaker to the audience again, because people know him already. Rajiv Vasudevan is founder and CEO of AyurVAID Hospitals. AyurVAID Hospitals offer insurance and CGHS-approved cashless Ayurveda medical care for serious diseases across its 8 hospitals spread over Bengaluru, Kochi, Gurugram, and Almora. AyurVAID is India's first NABH accredited Ayurveda hospital and first and only national quality award winner from the Ayurveda sector. With a total of 4 hospitals that are NABH accredited and one that is JCI, American Standards accredited, AyurVAID is the pioneer and leader in quality systems driven precision Ayurveda medical care. Further, 4 hospitals are located within India's leading quaternary care hospitals, Medanta Medicity, Aster Medicity, Sri Shankara Cancer Hospital, and Aster CMI Hospital, pioneering integrative medical care. Rajiv Vasudevan sir holds a BTech in Mechanical Engineering from NIT Calicut and an MBA from IIM Calcutta. Earlier, he served as country head PSG at Motorola India, CEO Technopark Trivandrum, and Director Kerala State IT Mission. In the latter capacity, he drafted the landmark Kerala IT Policy 2001-6, which led to transformation of the Kerala IT sector with significant job creation and socio-economic development of Kerala. He has served on the Kerala LHO Board of Directors of State Bank of India for 3 years and on the Board of Governors of NIT Calicut, his alma mater, for 8 years. Rajiv Vasudevan sir is member of Ministry of Ayush's National Advisory Committee, member of the Niti Ayog's Expert Committee on Integrative Medicine, member of the Ayush Grid Expert Committee. He is also the chairman for the Ayush Forum at the Confederation of Indian Industries, CII, and a charter member of TIE Bangalore. Earlier, he served as chair for Ministry of Ayush's expert working group on inclusion of Ayush in the Ayushman Bharat PM JAY Universal Healthcare Scheme, member of the NABH Standard Committee for Ayurveda Hospitals, convener of Ministry of Ayush's expert working group on COVID standalone trials, and member of several other expert committees on Ministry of Ayush and select state governments in India. Talking about Rajiv sir can itself take a whole session for of our thing. So I have made it short. I hope Rajiv sir, I have done the justice to introducing you, sir.
You've done more than justice. Thank you very much, Dr. Girish.
So before I start with the session, I would like to ask Rajiv sir, because this is a very interesting topic and very interesting session. Sir and I had a discussion and we had thought that this can be a very interactive session. So sir, how do you suggest this can be? Can it start with the talk or should it start with questions?
I think the mystery will continue that way. So I think might be that he can take it as it comes. In case somebody has questions, maybe they could post it in the chat box and then you could, if you feel it's appropriate, bring it up at that point. That will ensure, and then maybe later on.
Sure thing. So that would be ideal so that there is no interruptions in between. So all of you, please note that you may put your questions in the chat box and I can immediately take it up with sir. And any queries that you have, please be open and you can have a question directly. And if you want to directly ask also, that is also possible, maybe at the end of the session too. Without much further ado, can we start the session, sir?
Definitely. Yes. So let me just make a couple of sentences before you begin, Dr. Girish. So first of all, Mr.Sasi Varier, Mr.TVS Varier, and all stakeholders of Ashtangam Ayurvedics Private Limited, K.S.Varier Ashtanga Ayurvedics Limited. It's a privilege to be here on your invitation. I have interacted with you over the last from my company, AyurVAID Hospitals, over the last 3-5 years, maybe, and maybe before that, more sporadically. And I think what always has impressed me has been the quality of the people behind the venture, which automatically speaks for the quality of the company. So I would say that we are very happy to be associated with your esteemed organization with a tradition built over so many decades now. So my greetings to all of you, and thank you for hosting this. With that, I just want to make another point very clear. I don't assume myself to be an expert on anything. I just would say I have learned the hard way over 17 years of being in the Ayurveda sector really working hard at learning something. So certainly would be open to observations, comments, and to learning, and this entire process of exchange of ideas, and would certainly welcome feedback from our audience. And with that spirit in mind, let's make a beginning. Dr. Girish, thank you very much once again. Can you hear me? Am I audible? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So yes, sir. So we can start with the topic, sir.
Surely we can.
We have gone live on YouTube as well, just for the information of the participants, because we had participant bookings completing the whole list of 100. So it is also present in YouTube.
Yeah.
Sure, sir.
Have we arranged for screen sharing for him?
No, I don't need to make any presentation.
All right.
Yeah, I'll be speaking. Yeah. Okay, so the thought was that Dr. Girish, you have some questions in mind, or should I speak on the subject per se? What do you prefer?
I have the questions with me, sir. I have a few questions which have been coming up over the time period, so I can just read it out. I can start with that. So So the first question is, what is evidence-based medicine as opposed to what is being practiced now?
Yeah, so Dr. Girish, I think the question is pertinent in this respect, that unless we understand what is evidence-based medicine, you cannot get into telling what is being practiced today. So there are certain, and then we would go on to what is evidence-based medicine as applied to Ayurveda. So the point I think that is relevant is evidence-based medicine. There are classical definitions. You go on the internet, you will find a definition by David Sackett, which goes back 20 decades, which says that it's defined, and let me not just read out theoretically, but let me just speak from memory, that it says that when evidence-based medicine arises in the context of a clinical interaction between a doctor and patient, okay? It's not some theoretical thing coming there. So in a clinical situation where a clinician is confronted with a patient with a real life problem, you may have to spotlight differently, I think, if you don't mind. I think the settings may not be correctly set now, Dr. Girish. Yeah.
Vignesh, can you please spotlight the speaker?
Yeah. So I think the speaker is right. I think it is not currently set that way. So when the clinician is confronted with a actual patient in front of him, what he's supposed to do is to understand the clinical problem, and then refer to whatever is a published research in that regard, right? And then take a call, what is the applicable response to that clinical situation, right? So there are some key things here. There is a clinical problem, there is a body of published research, which should be referred, and then you apply that knowledge which is given in that published research, and thereafter you will check the outcomes of that and then refine this whole process. This is exactly what is supposed to be evidence-based practice of medicine. Now, what is the fundamental assumption in such a case would be that there is a body of research which has been vetted and which is credible and which has been put out there, which somebody can go and refer. So if you assume that I think we need to sort this out, Mr. Shashi. There is some confusion. So the point I'm coming to is that, take one example like total knee replacement. Now, total knee replacement is an area where today in India, you'll find that there are enough reports telling that unnecessary TKRs are done. But how do we decide that something is unnecessary or not? You'll find that there would be maybe 300 trials, right, which have been done on TKRs. And then at the end of that, a meta-analysis of that is done. And finally, a group of experts look at all published evidence on TKRs and then tell in what situation, for what type of person would you go ahead, where you would not go ahead, right? So if you take this as a point, it becomes a very, very clear heuristic or a rule book for a clinician in a practical situation to go and refer and get that out. And for this, the standards of practice are already laid down. Like you would have the NICE guidelines, You have the American Heart Association. Everybody has got guidelines which have been published, right? Now, there is another very interesting, so that means you need that. Now, what do you do with Ayurveda when this is the situation? So in the case of Ayurveda, there's another definition which comes to play, which was quite fascinating. And I read this definition actually about 18 years back, right? As I came into Ayurveda. So the definition said that any system of medicine or any practice of any system of medicine which is proven over generations of time or over time and by generations of good practitioners to have clinical benefit to a patient can be taken as evidence-based medicine. It's an amazing thing. Now, why is this important? Because if you go and look at the blood pressure management guidelines or the statin guidelines, right, you'll find that after all these talk of double-blind randomized clinical trials, etc., you'll find some of these guidelines for the main medical conditions say this is not based on a DDR-CT. It is not very well known. Unless you go and read the guideline, you will not know. It'll say it's based on clinical experience of a group of experts. So if you take that as a definition, what does that give us? It gives us Ayurveda, which over 3,000 years, or you might say 5,000 years of active practice by doctors over a period of generations, and today what you have is in practice is the resultant of continuous refinement over these many generations, right? Has to be evidence-based medicine. But still, let's hold on. Where is my body of published research, right? What do I refer to? So we go to the Brihatrais, and then you look at the Tikas which followed, and then you look at the other Lagutrais which came, right? If you look at the things which came subsequently, you'll find that there has been a continuous commentary on commentary and then subsequent developments which have come. Now, in the context of evidence-based Ayurveda, when we speak about it, therefore, how do I confront this topic? And when this was looked at again about 17, 18 years back, what struck me is a very beautiful, simple definition. Pratyaksham, Anumanam, Aptopadesham, Yukti, right? If in our day-to-day clinical practice, a doctor, and we'll see how this can be applied and how this can be made relatable to something which modern medicine does and how does it become much more rigorous. So there's much more. This is only in the context of diagnosis, so we'll go forward. But the moment I take Pratyaksham, Anumanam, Aptopadesham, Yukti, which means what? When I come to a diagnosis or a plan of care, I do not jump to a conclusion without doing the Pratyaksham, the Trivida Parikshas, right? So whether I'm doing, before I go to Anumanam, so Pratyaksham can be covering both the Darshanam, Sparshanam and Prashanam. And then you go to the point of, Anumanam, you're taking that in the context of all the history you've collected, you're doing that. But this has to be contextualized and referred to the body of already the knowledge which is there, right? So when I look at the entire body of knowledge, that is the beauty of Ayurveda. Even though a disease may be new, the human body will respond to that new disease also in terms of certain frameworks. That frameworks have been studied over millennia, not millennia, I mean thousands and millions of years. So that allows us a way to go to Yukti only after you do these three things. Some people prefer Aptopadesham, Pratyaksham, Anumanam, Yukti, but the other way is that I prefer it this way. Pratyaksham, Anumanam, Aptopadesham, Yukti. By doing it this way, what it brings in is a certain discipline to the process of arriving at a diagnosis and then a plan of care. We'll come to that point. Now, in the integrative medicine hospitals that we work at, I'll conclude this question with this one point. If you see a senior medical oncologist, when he is confronted with a particular type of cancer patient, what is amazing, and you have to respect them for that, right? Whether you agree or not, whether you say it is incomplete, it is this problem, that problem, it's very easy to take pot shots. But if you really see, what you'll find is that modern medicine specialist will refer the guideline and follows the guideline to the T, right? Here's a discipline. And when they question us telling there is no standard protocol, right? The fact that, and we'll understand how do we bring in a standard protocol where we are personalizing. So that we'll come to the challenges in Ayurveda as we go along in trying to apply this. But what you have to do is that the modern medicine equivalent doctor is applying those guidelines to a majority of the cases. So with all of this, we come to the fundamental issue with Ayurveda in trying to apply this, not issue in the sense, the challenge, is that you have a whole person approach to medicine. It is not a disease-specific approach to medicine. So when I am trying to do Roga Nirnayam and then go beyond that, how do I apply this evidence framework in the context of a whole person system of medicine is the challenge that will come. And yeah, so maybe I'll pause here and I'll go into the subsequent points. As we evolve, there are many more layers to this, but I'll wait to hear from you. Dr. Girish?
Sure, sir. So
is the signal okay? Is there any problem with the signal? It's coming through clearly to all of you.
Yes, it is coming through clearly, sir. I'll just check with Vigneshwaran as well.
It's coming through, but there is a yellow mark in your probably it's a little weak, but then it's coming through till now.
Okay.
I will also confirm with our IT support, sir. Vigneshwaran, sure. Is everything okay? All good?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And the live stream is also good?
Yes, we are going good.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, yes, sir. So, shall I go to the next question, sir?
Sure.
Yes, sir. So, so there is a question. Does it mean we are going in the same direction of clinical trials to prove a point? If so, is the same method of clinical trials applicable here as in allopathy?
So no. So let me just pause for a second and rewind a bit and then complete that particular stream of thought. I'll definitely answer this question, Dr. Girish. So therefore, we need to understand when you talk of evidence-based medicine in the context of Ayurveda, a lot of times we are thinking the context of evidence-based diagnosis, right? That's the first step. So getting to the right diagnosis for a particular person is only the first step in a larger process of chikitsa. So the way we see it at AyurVAID and the way we see it actually is supposed to be is that Roga Nirnayam is the first step. Next step is arriving at the Chikitsa Siddhanta. How do I come to the Chikitsa Siddhanta? The Chikitsa Siddhanta is based on I'll come to the steps required there. So if I'm getting towards a Chikitsa Siddhanta, is it for Roga Shamana or is it for Roga Shanti, or basically the Roga Nivaranam, disease reversal? Am I looking at disease alleviation or symptom alleviation? Is that my objective, or is my objective disease reversal? Number two, amongst a person, and I look at a whole person level as opposed to a disease, I'm looking at a whole person Roga Samprapti, right? So if I have to come to the diagnosis to get to a Roga Samprapti or an etiopathogenesis, I have to do a comprehensive whole person examination, right? In terms of the Trivida Parikshas, I have to go through the whole person thing, established through the different Parikshas leading to Srota Pariksha, then Nidana Panchaka, going to the Srota, the Roga Samprapti, right? So if I don't go through the classical Nidana Panchaka and from the Nidanas to the Lakshanas in a very systematic way, what is going to happen is that I think I know, but I think I've understood the patient, but very, very often what you'll find, and there's a very important point at this stage. We ask this question: if you have the same patient seen by 3 Ayurveda doctors, right, for a same condition, how likely are you going to find not 3 opinions, maybe 5 opinions? The same doctor can change the opinion after 2 minutes, right? And how does the one doctor, if I approach a group of patients of a given category, do I treat everybody the same way? So one doctor meeting 100 patients and 3 doctors meeting 1 patient, right? Many to one, one to many. How does the science perform? Only then it's a science, right? What does a science mean? It's a knowledge system. And I want to clarify, when you talk about all these things, it's important to talk about what is a science. So in a very simple way, a science, without getting into the huge philosophical definition, is where I look at a phenomenon, I look at a patient, right? I am able to measure some characteristics of this particular patient. Based on the measurement, I am going to hypothesize, I'm going to posit a certain view of what the patient will be like later. So I tell, if the patient is here, from here to here, the patient will go. If I don't do anything, if I do this medicine intervention, this patient will go like this and then come back here. Or I'll go back to a earlier point, right? I'm able to reverse. If I am having a theory in my mind based on whatever, people may question Vata, Pitta, Kabha, this thing, that thing, Srotas, I don't agree. But I've got a theory like quantum theory or quantum, field theory or some, solid mechanics. I put framework and I'm able to show the patient goes as predicted. Then my thing is a science. So what we have to do here is to predict something and make it happen. And Ayurveda does that extremely well. So the first step is to come to a diagnosis at a whole person level. So we establish the Roga Samprapti. Once the Samprapti is defined, then I go to the Roga Nirnaya, which will be multiple Rogas, not just one, right? It's not like simple, like a lollipop. One patient will come and say, Doctor, I am Amavata. With Amavata, I will have Kampavata. I may have two other things, diabetes, with piles, with gas. So many things are there, right? It's only in the textbook it will come. So we have to understand that when I have to treat the person, my duty as a Chikitsakan is to look at the person at a whole person level and then try to see what is the best way to get the Samprapti back to his original Prakritic state. So from Vikriti to Prakriti, how do I bring back in the simplest way? So for that, I need a Chikitsa Siddhanta. For a given Chikitsa Siddhanta, we have to consider then Rogabala, Rogibala, Desha, Kala, Agni, right? Apart from the core Chikitsa Siddhanta, based on the Roga, or let me just say Rogibala, Rogabala, Desha, Kala, I have to come to the Chikitsa Paddhati, also the patient's preferences. So again, for a given Chikitsa Siddhanta, from north to south to east to west, you will have different doctors applying different therapies. How do I standardize? Correct? And then we have another complication, Ahara, Vihara, Aushadha, Kriya. Correct? So it's a black box intervention. How do I standardize? So the point that should be coming then is, and that's the crux of I'm just going to come to that. So I have Roga Nirnayam, Chikitsa Siddhanta, Chikitsa Paddhati. For a Chikitsa Paddhati, now begins the biggest problem. How do I ensure that Dr. Girish, you write a Chikitsa Paddhati and give it to me? I'm a junior doctor, right? I'm your assistant. I have a team of Paricharaks with me. How do you ensure that over 3 weeks, whatever you told me is actually happening? Right? You told me a sequence of therapies and medicines and this thing, or you give the patient some compliance thing. Unlike popping in one pill in Ayurveda, that 15 ml, 45 ml, heat the water to this thing, cool it down, eat half an hour before lunch, before breakfast, and half an hour before this thing. It's so precise. To bring that precision becomes extremely difficult. The point I'm making is with all these difficulties, I get into Chikitsa Paddhati quality control. With that, finally, a very, very important thing comes in. How do I track outcomes? Because the measurement of outcomes today, if you come into Ayurveda and you go to the best universities, it's only now changing. But you look at till recently, most of the outcomes will be a 3-point scale. No standardization. Anybody just conceives of some 3-point thing and puts some Ayurveda terminology around it. No robustness, even from a Shastra's angle also, it will not be robust. Forget about from a modern angle. So the need to bring in standardized outcomes. So therefore, for this whole process to really fall in place, there are multiple things to happen. It will start with the standard intake form. There are some people, great Vaidyans, who may not just even ask 2 questions, but who are immediately concluding what the diagnosis is. Nothing is written down, right? So to come to a proper, and we applaud people who see 200 patients in a day or 100 patients in a day. As per Ayurveda, it is impossible to do unless I'm doing Roga Shamana. If I have to do correct Ayurveda to the fullest, where I'm seeing a new patient, I have to take that full time to understand him at complete level. This is what is required if you want the science to be practiced properly. But we have no problem. We have 60,000 doctors, whatever, 30,000 doctors passing out every year. There's no shortage of Ayurveda doctors. It's a shortage of intent and clarity of intent. So I will pause at this point. I'm trying to say throughout the sequence, the good news is that you can bring in tremendous clarity, standardization at every stage, right? So I'll conclude this part by telling that a lot of time questions will come in Ayurveda. How can you do it? Ayurveda is like, completely my subjective call. I'm a Vaidyan, I do what is there. He will do what he wants, she will do. So how do I bring in that standardize? That's a core point that keeps coming often. What you have to understand is that if you are able to discipline the set of steps, agree upon the set of steps required, at the end of the set of steps, more or less you will get convergence. It is because people don't follow the steps that you get the shortcuts happening and ego battles happening, ego fights. Because the elephant is an elephant. You will see it from different ways. So unless you have got a thing to say, I'll begin with the trunk and then go to the mastisk and then go backwards, right? That is a way to examine the elephant. We'll all end up with different situations. So I'll pause here and go to your second question. If you don't mind, you can repeat that, Dr. Girish. You're muted, please.
Sorry about that. So
No
does
problem.
it mean that we are going in the same direction of the clinical trials to prove a point? If so, is
Yeah.
the same method of clinical trials applicable here as in allopathy? So there was an addition to this question, sir. I had a doubt by myself while I was doing my post-graduation. So we have, when we are doing our study there, thesis there on a particular drug for a particular disease, we have to undergo both the set of questionnaires. So not just the questionnaires, both the set of parikshas. So you have, if I'm looking at my study was on cataract, so I had to do an LOCS grading grade 3 scale, which is the present scale for cataract grading, and then I had to first grade which kind of cataract is it. For example, posterior subcapsular cataract, or maybe it is a cortical cataract. And it had certain parameters like glare, muscae vulgaris, and stuff like that. So in the similar way, we have some Ayurvedic parameters as well. So are we looking at a clinical trial which is much more in detail, or is it just paperwork, or can we actually concise this? This is also a question which I wanted to add along with this question.
Okay, so the specifics of your thesis, without studying, I can't comment on that. But in general, let me put it like this: the need to go to a alternate paradigm, right? How can we make the best of the need for a clearly distinguishable? How do we attribute that what we are intervening with is actually causing an impact or not? And we've had studies like this rheumatoid arthritis trial where a placebo is given with 2 tablets. One tablet is something and another tablet. This type of approaches are actually distorting what Ayurveda is meant to be. Okay, so let's go back to your point. And it's a very interesting thing to remember that while we applaud this DBRCT, and I should respect the insistence of modern scientists to say, show me the randomized clinical trials. So we need to do randomized trials. But at what level do we draw the randomization? How do we draw the sample becomes a very critical thing in Ayurveda. Now, just on an aside, it was very interesting that Nature magazine in 2015 came out with a certain paper called Imprecision Medicine. Okay, there's one article by particular Imprecision Medicine and said need for 1% trials. Okay, telling very clearly that today the way the trials, clinical trials are done, just don't represent. You have the classical, lab to bench to bedside kind of challenges, which what you do in the lab doesn't work in the nursing situation. But on the other hand, the fact that the parameters are so individual specific, and why did he bring this up? He showed one data of the top 10 selling drugs in the US, right? These are all multi-billion-dollar, brands. Top 10 drugs. For every person, the drug could help. For every 1%, it helped 3 to 24 people got side effects. This published in Nature, right? For 1%, it helps 3 people to 24 people. That means even for the least or the most beneficial drug, out of 4 people, 1 will get benefit and 3 will get side effects. This is the nature of this DBRCT standard, what it has created, right? And the kind of outcomes when you look at it is so marginal. On the other hand, what we could do to learn from that, in my view, is from an Ayurveda perspective, right? Get down the population, your sample, you're defining the inclusion-exclusion criteria in such a way. And that's the art which comes into this. Okay, I think somebody asked who will bell the cat. I think I saw a question coming. So I think we'll, try to address it partially there and maybe later if he's not satisfied, he or she is not satisfied. That if you are able to look at any you take a pool of diabetics. In modern medicine, you will say X to Y, HbA1c, this exclusion criteria would be defined in a particular way. From an Ayurveda perspective, how would I come to the inclusion-exclusion criteria so that I get a homogeneous group? So even within your cataract patients, right, with a particular stage, right, you would have gone with a particular medicine or particular medicine with procedure. Now, while from allopathy angle, these were defined in a particular way, from an Ayurveda angle, you would have had that Timiram would have been at different stages of Timiram, right? So depending on the stage of that cataract, you would have intervened with different things if you had the choice, right? And also in a realistic situation, you would consider what are other comorbidities, does it have an impact on that? Shiras, something else happening, multiple things you would consider. You would not go and keep on putting one medicine. So I think what we really need to do there is, in my view, give MD students, MS students, everywhere when they do research, to go back to what Ayurveda has posited, which means that I'm able to group patients on Ayurveda characteristics. So I am able to, these lot of times people say diagnose an allopathy and treat an Ayurveda. But how do I treat an Ayurveda? I will have to bring in inclusion-exclusion criteria based on Ayurveda principles as a layer on top of the inclusion-exclusion criteria defined in modern medicine. So you apply first modern medicine thing, bring in. Within that, you group into subgroups based on Ayurveda and then tell. So for example, during COVID, I just wanted to know, when the whole world was going with one size fits all prophylaxis, right? And then the government also came out with Ayush 64 and Kabasar, Kudineer and things like that. In addition, the point is that all these patients, even for prophylaxis, are very, very different. And their relative risk to get complications is very different. I am asthmatic. Somebody else is a heart patient. Third person is a person with a gastric issue. The way they would respond, he's got a chronic URTI. So all of these people would respond totally differently. And therefore, we need to make it homogeneous. And the point I'm making is we ended up with 9 prescription groups, right? And this can be automated. But within that group, you'll get very, very good outcomes. Now, let me conclude this point by telling, if Ayurveda is practiced the way it is meant to be, our understanding is that where you get 20% people getting outcomes or 30% people getting outcomes, that's the kind of outcomes that are shown in some of these modern medicine drugs. In Ayurveda, we would get 100% of the people getting good outcomes. But that means that I have to give the right medicine to the right person. So the trial part, I feel that there is a need for change, both in companies like yours and ours, where you're doing clinical trials for medicines. We should not take shortcuts and distort the principles of Ayurveda. But at the same time, we cannot go away from rigorous science. Therefore, we need to apply the correct sampling techniques and put it into the right approach, whatever is the rigorous approach, but bring in a layer of Ayurveda on top. Mr. Shashi, am I going too fast and too theoretically? Is it okay? What you're hearing?
It's a bit too heavy. I'm sure it's a bit too heavy for a large number of people. But then I understand this has to be there. This has to be discussed on some table at some time. So let's go on.
Yeah,
it's very, very interesting.
Okay. Sir, I think this is a very interesting discussion going on, because there are quite some thought processes which are coming to me through my messages as well. Some of them have messaged me as well. So there is another question in the chat box, if you see, sir. So that is from Dr. Abdul Aziz. Sir, according to the Drug Control Certification Board, it has been an assertion or statement that a new herbal, that is crude formulation, cannot even claim to be immune booster. It can only be sold as a nutraceutical. What are the factors to be proved or submitted to obtain the therapeutic formulation certificate?
Yeah, I think, this is a very loaded topic, Dr. Aziz. And in fact, I think nutraceuticals have gone, under the radar, like the Russians are trying to bomb Ukraine, nutraceuticals are there coming under the radar to bomb the classical Ayurveda sector, in my view. So I feel that we need much more higher expectations and regulations to regulate nutraceuticals. Even the dietary supplements which are sold as immunity boosters. So the whole category of Ayurveda Ahar, which is being defined, if it is not carefully done, the problem is that people without rigorous clinical research are making outrageous claims, and the whole market is awash with people making such outlandish, outrageous claims. It's really bad. It brings a bad name to everybody, and I feel in India, we need to regulate that. So to answer your question, do a proper clinical trial, Dr. Aziz. No shortcuts. And what to do, how to do, if you go to the Drugs and Cosmetics Act relating to nutraceuticals, it tells, but it is not, currently people are able to get away by taking individual ingredients, mixing it and telling each of those ingredients has got a certain therapeutic value. But unless I'm able to show the combined thing, right? A is good, B is good, C is good. You mix it together. It's like telling honey is good, hot water is good. You mix honey and hot water, it's poison. So you can't just take license selling their herbal, and herbals can be very, very dangerous. The right medicine for the wrong person can be very dangerous. So I think we should be very clear, bring in very stringent standards, inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria. Just as the misunderstanding that Ayurveda medicines are safe and no side effects, that is a misunderstanding. Similarly, the nutraceuticals are even more dangerous.
Yes, sir. So I think that has been a good answer. So there is shall I move on to the next question, sir?
Yeah, please.
So
yeah.
how do we include the various variables of precision medicine or personalized medicine in the present method of clinical trials? So I think that is a continuation of that question. So if because I think the question here is
so I think this word precision medicine. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So for example, when there is a clinical randomized clinical trial in allopathy in the modern thought process, it is usually given to say, for example, if I'm taking my exclusion criteria as just diabetes mellitus, I'm taking 50 eyes of cataract who are not diabetic or hypertensive or any other comorbidities, to make it very simple. This again is going to be much more precise when we are going through the Ayurvedic material, because there are going to be Vataja people, Vata Kafaja people, Kafa Vataja people, there are Vata Pittaja people. So I think here the word precision has been used for that. Personalized medicine, I guess. So again, the question persists. I think that can we come to a standardization there?
Okay, so I think I missed a certain stretch. I'll try to respond in case I don't precisely address your question. Please, warn me. I will try to come back. So this word precision medicine is based on, in Western concept is based on getting to the precise, the underlying mechanism right down to a genetic level or at a cellular level or at a tissue level or enzyme level or protein level, and then say that that particular mechanism has been established, and then we try to address it. Yeah. So the point which I'm conveying is that in taking that type of approach, it assumes that every disease in modern medicine, right, they are tackling the root cause, right? But 99% of the time, you'll see a very interesting thing. I don't know whether you've noted it, that there is a category of medicines called disease, DMARD, disease modifying and whatever drugs. These are the only medicines in modern medicine which actually tackle the ostensible root cause of the disease, right? So in rheumatoid arthritis, they have immunologicals, which actually is supposed to tackle the immunological underlying mechanism of rheumatoid arthritis. So in general, that is not happening. So if you look at precision medicine in the context of Ayurveda, I think it is achievable if 3 doctors see the same patient and come to the same diagnosis. If that, I think that's the simplest way to get to that. And there is one question which came, I think, in chat box, which distracted me at that point. So somebody, BB0F685F, is asking, are you meaning the 9 prescription types are sort of broad spectrum medicines, as it's extremely difficult or impossible to prove through double random tests? A very valid point. So if you can introduce your name, please, it'll be nice to address you by name. It's a good question. So I would say that that's where we have to go back and say that I don't need to show it with one single drug, because that will never happen, because even one kashayam in Ayurveda could have 25 chemical compounds or 100 chemical compounds inside it, right? Some more active, some less active. So that is never going to happen that I can show that complete randomized thing, right? Because to get that level of standardization, you can imagine even batch to batch, you forget, right? Even within one batch, 3 bottles will have varying concentrations of some medicines. So the variation that is coming there. So to answer that, I think the black box approach is a very good approach, which means to the gentleman who or lady who asked, by the black box approach is being notified by the WHO as an acceptable scientific method, wherein you don't know which of those 9 within the package of inputs you're giving, which of them is working or not working. You may not be, but you know, and collectively they are working, and collectively they are safe. That is okay. That's number one. And number two, there are other disease treatment methodologies like treat to target. So if you take many chronic conditions, you don't have to show this or that. You'll just show a person that I started intervening, and over 3 months, 6 months, you take the person to target. And there are no side effects, other things, right? And so this particular approach, there are other scientific approaches other than DBRCT is what I'm trying to state to everybody. You can bring in a scientific rigor, but apply it in the Ayurveda context by, looking at the unique nature of Ayurveda. I'll stop at that. I don't think I answered your question precisely. Maybe later we can revisit it, Dr. Girish, on the hypertension and other things.
Yes, sir. No issues. Sir, okay. The next question is, if we do that, does that not become difficult to quantify, and therefore, okay, that is just the continuation of the same question on validating. And so with a trial which is looking at validating a drug, so that is just the continuation of that, sir. So what is integrative practice which is ethical? So that is a interesting question, I think.
So first of all, this word integrative is very important, and let me clarify that for everybody. This word integrated is used in very loosely by lots of people. Okay. So you ask, what do you mean by integrated medicine? What most people think immediately is mixopathy, right? So an Ayurveda doctor is doing allopathy, come Ayurveda, allopathy doctor is doing, which not so much, but still somebody doing mixopathy is integrated medicine. That is not quite the intent. So the integrated actually very classically means that you take an MD in general medicine, modern, right? He goes and qualifies in modern medicine, in a Chinese system of medicine or Ayurveda. He's dual qualified, and he's in one person who's qualified to practice 2 people. Yeah. So the one person doing 2 systems of medicine, that is, but he's qualified to do that. That is integrated medicine. Integrative is something that is more applicable for all such systems, which means what? In the care of a patient, there are experts from multiple systems of medicine who come together, right, to analyze the patient and then come up with what is appropriate for the patient, the rogi roga avastha, what is right to give that patient. And which part, like at a whole person level, I'll say, okay, you manage the cancer, I'll manage this thing, you manage the diabetes, I manage that thing. That approach of a patient-centric approach where you don't have, antagonistic reaction or agonist or antagonistic reaction with your medicine, multiple systems come together. That is integrative. So much so that yesterday in the talk with the Government of India, when I stressed this point, now that has come into Government of India vocabulary formally, because the Niti Aayog head of Ayushman Bharat, the entire health programs, he said, let's use the word integrative. So that is specific. Now, what is ethical integrative care? Very clearly, we have to understand is, I understand my science completely. Somebody else understands his or her science completely. And ethical thing is where we are able to establish the clear boundaries of what each practice will do for a given patient. It's truly patient-centric in its approach. And it is measurable. It has got a certain theory. So where I'm telling, so each practitioner will establish their treatment objectives for a given patient. And I'm not telling you anything theoretical. I'm telling you things which are actually happening on the ground today. So it's not theoretical at all. So you establish mutual boundaries, mutual objectives, and then you are able to work together in treating a given patient and track outcomes, which is a whole person, all the outcomes you can do, biomarkers, you're talking about Ayurveda parameters, the patient reported outcomes, right? Everything you can bring comprehensive measurement, but that is at a whole person level, right? And you bring in markers from there. That is an ethical practice. But when I try to do it, it is like this whole burst that I should go and learn sonography. This whole burst, many Ayurveda associations want Ayurveda doctors to learn sonography. For what? There are experts who are, that is not ethical practice. Whatever, I'll give you one example here. Somebody I know who is MS gynecology from JIPMER, right? MBBS from Calicut Medical College, MS Obgyn from JIPMER, right? Professor at St. John's initially, and then MRCOG. Then to go and practice fetal medicine, that person in her mid-40s or whatever goes to Chennai and spends 1 year working under a senior laparoscopic, whatever, fetal medicine specialist. And only after doing that much for that many years is she qualified to practice, be a fetal medicine specialist. That's the way it has been brought out. That is the rigor with which this qualification has been done. So if you look at this, I think my thought split here. So in the context of just remind me where we were, Dr. Girish. I'm sorry, I lost the thread.
No, in the context of integrative medicine, sir. So
yeah, so that is a level of specialization people are bringing in. So I cannot suddenly go and say I'm a fetal medicine specialist. Oh, you have a prasava raksha thing to be done. I will do it this way, that way. I cannot play with life. I have to know my boundaries. I have to work with responsibility. So I think it's a great sunrise opportunity, and I would go to the extent of telling. I talked about two major trends in a talk before Government of India policy officials. One major trend is that what we began with, that everything is going digital, right? There are going to be tremendous impact in time to come. The other part, which is going to be very, very clear, right? Whether the opposite side, I call them opposite because many of them are on opposite. There's no need to be opposite. And opposite is us also, because many here also see them as opposite. I think integrative care, this appropriate merging, right? Depending on Rogi Roga Avastha, what to do, where, when, is going to become the norm increasingly. And some years down the line, we look back and say that this all began many years back, but we are here now where a patient comes to a place and we have protocols telling, okay, primary cancer-directed therapy is happening from modern medicine. There are adjuvant therapies going from Ayurveda, rehabilitation happening from Ayurveda. These kind of very beautifully defined protocols would come. And this is not far, far away. By specialty, you'll see it unfolding in the coming months and years in the near future. Namaste, Dr. Sheila. Pleased to have you here as well. Yeah. Dr. Girish?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So the next question is, okay, there is a question on what is precision medicine.
Yeah. So systematic
that has already been answered. Yeah. There are posts by allopathic fraternity today. Yes, sir. Systematic.
I think there are two questions which have come up. You could maybe take it. One is that the earlier gentleman has asked that Vyome is doing something in Ayurveda and diagnosis and food as the medicine. So, yes, that I cannot comment completely on what Vyome does, although I know it's a very well-funded company, etc. But the larger point I would say, definitely there's scope to collaborate with everybody who has got an open mind. And we need to collaborate and see. The only issue is that we have to stand with confidence about our science and stand with what that science is supposed to tell us, not distort it and take shortcuts. For example, a placebo medicine in Ayurveda, is a total distortion of Ayurveda. How can you make in real life a placebo? I'm taking Kashayam, Arishtam, this thing. I cannot truly do a blinded trial that way, right? To get it blinded, I make one Ayurveda Guliga and some other Guliga. That is not the way to do it. So I have to stick with what our science is, and within the scientific framework, how do I do it? And Dr. Sheila has asked this other question about, meta-analysis and systematic reviews, right? I think Ayurvedic pharmaceutical science, Dr. Sheila, my general comment is that to get to a point where we can have meta-analysis to happen, systematic reviews and meta-analysis, the quality of trials in Ayurveda has to increase significantly, totally change. I think the rigor of what is being done is so short. If you look at what has been done, even during this course of the last 2 years, right, that rigor which should have been there, right? After 2.5 years, we all talked about what we can produce in terms of Ayurveda's impact, Dr. Sheila. But in reality, what is the evidence today to even categorically tell Ayurveda does this or that, right? So you may say we didn't have access to patients. And my general comment is that to get to a point of meta-analysis and systematic reviews, you have to go through the whole, there's a lot of and it has to come from the top, because I will not blame students, I will not blame teachers. From the top governance, whether we should come up by permitting our student researchers and other, different teaching researchers, every teacher researchers, everybody to go to a much more Ayurveda-based framework. And you'll see one thing, Dr. Sheila, you'll see countless articles telling, no, this Western system of research does not apply to Ayurveda. But nobody has come and told this is what we should do in Ayurveda. Right? The correct way. Maybe you have some ideas. Maybe you can discuss that post this particular flow. But in Ayurveda, we are not telling this is what we want our students to do. Instead, we continue with a distorted semi thing. And in the process, we don't get the full research, which is the power of what we should be expecting. And which is possible. So I hope that the NCISM, the National Commission for Indian Systems of Medicine, will come out with a little bit more, visionary definition of what kind of research can happen in colleges and then, in government institutions. But it's going to be a very tough haul. I'm not thinking, because we have gone so far on a different direction, and you have the north, south, east, west type of Ayurveda. How to get it all together is going to be a challenge.
So then I think this question is very applicable here. What is precision medicine, sir? So
no,
can you...
I did refer to precision medicine earlier. What it says very clearly is that, see, this language came almost 20 years back. What it talks about is that every person you can define in terms of his genome, right? His genes, his vital parameters. You take all the personal health technologies and you come up with like this biome type of thing. There are many companies now telling, I'll study your gut, right? The gut microbiome is taken, analyzed, and then I'll give you exact probiotics to fix the gut microbiome, right? Whereas in our thing, we do a Virechan and maybe we do a Vasti, right? With the preceding Purva Karmas, and you restore the microbiome. You don't need to put something else there, right? And why? Because one fundamental thing from an Ayurveda perspective, we are allowing the body to restore balance. There, they are putting outside things to try to create the balance. So precision medicine, as I see it, is from an Ayurveda perspective, it's simple. And that's the first goal. 3 doctors, 5 doctors seeing the same patient should come to the same Athurapatrika and Roga Nirnaya. And from the Roga Nirnaya, go to the Chikitsa Siddhanta and Paddhati. The day we can show that in a live experiment, we should do that. Dr. Sheila, you should also, take the lead along with everybody. We should do this as a program. Get one patient to be seen by 10 doctors, and can we come to the same Chikitsa Roga Nirnayam at a whole person level, Rogi level, Chikitsa Siddhantam, Chikitsa Paddhati. Right? If we can achieve that, then we are a science. Till that time, we are all talking Ayurveda is great, this, that, but you're not become a science.
The reason I went back to that question is because, sir, we also have the concepts of, I wouldn't say concepts, we can actually do the analysis through that as well. Like, for example, in a case of a study of diseases, you have Bija, Dosha, the Matraja Vayava, the Pitraja Vayava. I think we have the same kind of detailing we have, but I do not know if we are practicing that. So,
so it's an ocean, right? So it's an ocean. So that is why I go back to a very important point. And that's where I think this evidence-based medicine definition, if you apply in principle, what does it mean? I have a clinical problem. And what they have told in that whole definition, Dr. Girish, and Mr.Sasi and others, is that it's an ocean of knowledge. You can never know a subject completely. The only way to study the ocean is to tell where I want to dig deep, right? And then go deep and do that, and then look at nearby surroundings. Similarly, when I have a clinical problem in front of me, patient presenting with a set of issues, then I have to go deep into that subject and get there. That's the only way. In the process, whether you are telling that, is it from the, maternal side and paternal side, or, what are the factors, if it is indicated, right? If such things are indicated, balding is indicated coming from maternal side, there could be some reference to that. I'm giving as an example, right? So that's already there, but you're able to utilize that. But the larger point would be, we cannot establish a general framework for that. We have to go condition by condition, within that subtype by subtype. And we need to have people start looking at patients from the lens of Roga Samprapti. Every time I look at a patient, I should be able to see the person not as this roga or roga lakshanas, vyadhi lakshanas, but I have to look at the person as a whole person with a certain evolution of the pathogenesis. And the pathway from the contributory root causes to the root to the leaves, I should be able to visualize a patient. When I do that, I'm seeing the patient as a classical Ayurveda physician would be able to see a patient. That's precision medicine. Otherwise, we are doing an allopathy style Ayurveda, and unfortunately, we are learning for this condition, this medicine, for this thing, do that, and we miss the larger picture. And because of this imprecision medicine in Ayurveda, many of the side effects, many of the issues that we are seeing now, which are coming up, are a result of that. And we are covering our eyes, putting it under the carpet, telling you are not responsible. But a lot of the problems are created by us only because we are not. The right medicine for wrong person can be as bad as the wrong medicine for the right person. So that all becomes imprecise medicine is what I'm trying to tell. For Ayurveda, we need to get to the science. Yeah. Yes, please.
You're muted, Girish.
I also got a comment in the YouTube chat box from Dr.
Yeah.
Zankana. What is your message to patients to be equally participative in creating evidence-based Ayurveda? What top 3 things that patients should keep in mind to contribute towards EBA, evidence-based Ayurveda?
Well, I mean, I think, I don't know whether specific to evidence-based Ayurveda, because the nature of Ayurveda intervention is, it covers personalized diet, lifestyle, medicine, and therapy, right? Depending on the rogi roga avastha, what the patient experiences can only be in patient's own experience of the changes, right? So while somebody, it's like telling, how is the temperature outside? I look at the Google and then check what is the temperature outside. But the moment I step outside into the open, I can feel the heat and cold. I know how cold or hot it is, right? Similarly, if I tell that, how is your Parkinsonism? My Parkinsonism is better. I don't take some chemical just to tell that. That is one part. The patient reported way of telling that I feel better, my digestion is better. I'll give you a very wonderful example here, which will probably give why I believe so much in Ayurveda, and I don't know whether Dr. Jankana's question gets answered. We had a case of 18-month-old child with Cry-do-Chat syndrome. Okay, it's called cat's cry syndrome. It's a chromosomal defect. Now, very specifically, this child came in from California and was a classical Cry-do-Chat syndrome child. Cat's cry. Was very irritable, would constantly crying and really restless, high vata. You can just see that. And the child would just not. The moment anybody came close by, the child would cry and would just go back to the mother and all that. About 8 days, 10 days after the treatment, the mother says, I see the mother and child, and the mother, child is pulling the mother and walking in the corridor, right? Cat's cry syndrome, basically the voice has not changed. It's a chromosomal defect, but the child is now going and meeting patients and going and holding up and looking, curiosity, much calmer. Then I asked the mother, how is the child? And the mother said, child is sleeping better, eating better, motion is clear, okay? And last 8-10 days, when I hold the child in my arms, the child's buttocks have become bigger, right? Now, I don't know whether these are outcomes in any other system of medicine. From my angle, a mother telling the child is better, that is the proof. A mother who sees a child 24 hours a day. Similarly, a human being who sees 24 hours a day. Now, going back to your evidence-based Ayurveda, why I'm bringing this up, you have functional parameters, you have biomarkers, you have scales. So you can bring, now to answer specifically, you can bring in international outcome scales to measure the outcomes, not a 3-point scale, 5-point scale. You bring in all the rigor. As this very favorite controversy between modern medicine and Ayurveda, where people say that some modern medicine doctor in India who has not done anything scientific or technical, right? He's only using the technology of others, will say, you Ayurveda guys are using my technology, right? There is no you and me. That technology is purely a technology. It's like a mobile phone. If I use for using it as a fundus camera, Dr. Girish, right? I'm using it for checking out the fundus. I don't need to say it is modern medicine phone or Ayurveda phone, right? Both doctors can check the fundus by using that particular tool on the camera. So similarly, I can use those tools to establish, but that's the critical part. I don't need to be limited by what the modern medicine parameters are. I should use that. But in addition, and that's the beauty which is there, if our Ayurveda doctors can start thinking on those lines, that if I have got a bunch of symptoms on top, right, Lakshanas are on top, there is a root cause mechanism happening below, which is what is the dosha dusha samurchana happening, considering that for the dosha dusha samurchana, if I'm saying pitta in this particular place is happening, is excess or pitta vriddhi, pitta chaya, whatever is happening, right? Or pitta prakopa is happening. So if you take that, what would be the appropriate biomarker to represent that underlying mechanism? And then take that biomarker. That is the way we need to go deeper and deeper. Unfortunately, we have also become fairly lazy. And we just blame outsiders. So there's so much of work to be done in the Ayurveda end. The great encouraging thing, very, very bright talent coming into Ayurveda in the last many years, right? Last 10 years, 15 years, you see bright talent coming in. And that is the future of Ayurveda. People who are able to think independently, ask, and further generations. Dr. Jankana's question, I don't know if I've answered, but anyway, I tried to.
Unmute yourself.
Yeah, you can leave it unmuted, Dr. Girish. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So is there any, there is another question which came up in the YouTube chat box. So one Radha Soman, is there any reviewed standard case taking form in Ayurveda?
When you say standard, there are many people who use standard forms across the board, right? But without naming this, I still remember one research which was being done in one of the centers of CCRS many years back. I remember for cerebral ataxia. So I was talking to the principal researcher at that time, and I was seeing the Athurapatrika, which was being filled up, right? It was so comprehensive that, it was 20 pages, 25 pages. Everything was there, nothing left. The entire textbook was covered, tick, 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 tick. Then I said, this does not come in the research paper at all. All of this you're taking. He said, no, this I'm doing for my satisfaction. If I give it like this to the scientific board, they are not going to accept it in this way. So I have a parallel paper and I have the other paper, which is short. But I can show the kind of things we do at AyurVAID, right? AyurVAID hospitals, the hospitals which I'm part of. But definitely there is scope to standardize this, which is why evidence-based Ayurveda, to Mrs. Radha, Dr. Radha Soman, who asked this question, my answer would be evidence-based Ayurveda begins with a standardized intake form. And I've told this many years back in national forums, Government of India. If you don't standardize that minimum thing, otherwise it's garbage. And secondly, you have to train doctors who are filling it up to correctly interpret what is given in the Athurapatrika. Otherwise, what happens is garbage in, garbage out, right? I can sit, even a simple thing like Agni, right? If I don't come up and say, in deciding Agni, if I'm telling the, Manda Agni, Vishama Agni, Tikshna Agni, and Sama Agni, each doctor has got certain latitude to decide what is what. It has to be made so specific. So again, 5 doctors, 10 doctors will exactly establish that. It seems obvious, such a simple thing. As you get into more complex things, it can get very complicated. But even in simple things, you will see variability in the way it is filled up. So extremely important to do it, but not only have standard intake form, but also train people in every single terminology there.
True, sir. So moving on to the next question. How do we bring about a revolution in practice if raw materials are harder and harder to get?
Well, I think you are the experts, Ashtanga should be Ashtanga Ayurveda should tell how you are planning to beat this thing. But what I understand from colleagues in the Ayurveda medicine sector, that actually a planned production based on demand and supply, right? Which are the species of plants which are in greater demand, ensuring that there is a full cycle of supply chain created, of quality supply chain created there. That would resolve almost 70, 80% or 90% of the issues. It is not a shortage across species. Certain species, like you'll say Ashoka is not there, or maybe some other rare herbs are not available. Today you have the problem of adulteration, duplicate source plants like the Tenospolia cordifolia controversy. So these kind of issues, which are where you're getting adulteration, intended, unintended, all of this is there. I would say that it has to be planned activity, but industry has to work. The National Medicinal Plan Board last year, right, came out with a very aggressive plan. And the last budget had announced 4,000 crores for medicinal plant cultivation. You may have noted it. I don't think it has taken off, but a lot of work has happened on the ground in terms of telling there is a need to plan this out. And I hope it will fall in place sooner than later. This whole framework will fall in place sooner than later. And we have to be the other lateral thinking solution, which I would say, is that today the industry, where is the industry going? We are all going towards, one side is going towards patents, right? How many people with their hand on heart will tell I stick to classical generic medicines, right? Now, the moment I say for diabetes, Nisha Amlaki so-and-so thing is, the Kashayam is what I need, or I Gayatri Adi Kashayam, then the whole world is taking that and just sticking with that. If this industry is as knowledge-based and driven and strong as it should be, what should happen is, there is screen sharing happening again. Okay, so so as and when I should always be able to find substitutes. Okay, you're there, right? I thought the signal might be waiting. Okay, so we should be able to find equivalent, what is the right word for it? For a given treatment principle, there's not just one drug. There may be a drug of choice, definitely. But then I could find probably other dravyas which will achieve the same objective. So I feel that if you go into our books, there are so many other drugs which are currently not being brought out. And one of my big concerns, a bigger concern, is that how do we ensure that manufacturers like yourself, which are established, are able to make sufficient quantity of a wider variety of medicines, because there are not enough people prescribing it. So you need to have enough doctors who are prescribing the range of classical medicines and not just sticking to the main thing, Abhyarishtam, Jiragarishtam, this type of, classical Amrutotaram Kashayam. Okay, that is very classical, should be there. But if that is not available, I need to have something else in my armory. And Ayurveda is so rich. So we should not be complaining about that. We need to find alternatives, go back to the books and promote classical medicine use. In fact, that should be a movement and not, in the interest of just making margins. Mr. Shashi has got some strong feedback on that. Looks like stick to patents.
There is a challenge of volumes. Like if you say
that's what I said. That's exactly what I said. Volumes is the issue. Yes. So one economy is volumes, but the other thing is
a volume.
Yeah, but then we make it price it higher. But if it's a better drug, better outcome, safer, it should still work. But my larger point is this whole thing, I always say, one level it has become an Aushadha-driven sampradaya. Ayurveda has become an Aushadha-driven industry, whereas Ayurveda is a Chikitsa sampradaya, where Aushadha is only one part of it. The moment this change comes in, I start looking at what are the options in Aushadha available to me for a given disease, Rogi Roga Avastha. So the whole problem is, you give me a book which says that this particular medicine, what are the indications I should use? So I don't need to apply my mind. I see somebody coming with cough, cold, I just go to that page and give that medicine, right? So there is a multi-pronged reformation required to go back to what Ayurveda really stands for.
Yes, there was another point that I wanted to make about the drugs availability of medicines. So I've been talking to many people on this, but then the outcome is not there. What I have been asking for is, like, for example, if you take bell, that is Egel marmalus, Vilva, the root is to be taken. And Vilva, to get the right kind of root size, for you to have the right kind of active principles there, Vilva has to grow for at least 8 years to get your root there.
Yeah.
Once you get to 8 years, you cut the tree, take out the root. and there is no tree anymore. You need to create a new tree.
How do you do that?
Yeah. So this is a challenge which we have. And I have been, asking researchers to take up this research on taking up some other part of the same plant to get to know how much of, say, if I'm wanting to take 100 kilos of bilwa for a particular kashayam, if I can take 150 kilos of its trunk or the leaf, and I get the same kind of principles there, does that not make more sense? And does it not sustain the plant? So this
I think,
is something that
gentlemen like, researchers like Dr. Aziz would be able to add.
Could take
Let
up
me give you
this.
2 bits of data here, Mr. Sasi, that in the case of traditional Chinese medicine, in 1947, the moment they became independent, they set upon the problem that you just told, which is they went and tried to characterize, but Chinese medicine is different from Ayurveda, right? As we know, right? They go with single herbs and single parts of herbs, a single biological material, the claw of a tiger or some liver of a tiger and whatever they'd be taking. But the larger part is that they characterized every part of every species of tree. They started this in 1947. India, after 75 years, is still is beginning its act, right, of really doing things. So that is one small gap which is there. But let me put it in a different way, Mr. Sasi, that it's been, whenever this issue comes up, that Ayurveda says you should pluck the plant in the morning facing the north and all the things which are given there, how can you do it in today's world? What is the beautiful thing, even with all these compromises, even with the preservatives, with the variation from batch to batch, still Ayurveda gives very good outcomes. And by and large, if you give the right medicine to the right patient, does not create side effects. Yes. After 16, 17 years, a lot of the people say, all the people who come and talk about this problem, that problem, they come and look, ask the patients, how many we track adverse events for every patient we treat.
Yes.
Right? We know exactly what percentage will be maybe some small thing here, there, which happens, but which resolves in itself, right? And we're tracking it. So my larger point, it's a blessing in disguise, Mr. Sasi, that even in spite of all these issues, the medicines work.
Yes.
Which is why Ayurveda survives. So that is not a final answer. It's an interim answer to the problem.
So Girish, you can go ahead with the rest of the questions also.
Sir, you're on mute.
Unmute.
Yes, sorry for that. So yes, sir. We since the time is also limited, we are coming to the last set of questions. I'd say set because both the questions are somehow related when I'm reading it. But just before that, I saw that Radha Soman from YouTube had also asked a follow-up question: where can we get one? That is the standard case taking form. Is it publicly available? Is one question she had asked in the YouTube form.
So I think it should be, I'm sure if she searches on internet, you'll get hundreds of case taking forms, right? So depending on the context and other, for which she is wanting to do this, maybe she can seek support and we can definitely help her in that regard. Also, it has to be made, there's a general approach you bring in, plus in addition, you bring in a disease-specific, case form, Athurapatrika can be designed for that. And yes, in addition to Athurapatrika, you need to go beyond, therefore, depending on the application, how you track the patient post that. So it's a full flow we need to track, right? Not just the recording of information, but how do I come to diagnosis? How do I track what intervention and the logic of arriving at the intervention? So, see, the important thing of evidence-based Ayurveda should be, if you ask a doctor, he or she should be able to tell clearly, this is what I have examined and found. From this examination, this is what is emerging. From this, I come to a, Rogi Roga Avastha. I decide to focus on the following treatment objectives right now for Roga Shamana, Roga Shanti, And for this particular objective, what is the Chikitsa Siddhanta and then the Chikitsa Paddhati at a particular Desha Kala and Rogi Bala. So if I take this very clearly, put it together, that type of clarity has to come through end to end. Only then it's becoming truly precision Ayurveda, evidence-based Ayurveda.
Thank you, sir. So,
So that is the answer to Dr. Radha Soman's question.
yes,
She's welcome to contact you, and then maybe, after that, take it from there.
Sure, sir. Sure. So, sir, the next two questions are actually interrelated. So, when there is a world full of doctors practicing different methodologies of diagnosis and treatment and saying their method is evidence-based, how do we select the right doctor is the first question. And the second question is, does the present doctor need training for evidence-based practice? Then is it there in the present curriculum?
See, if you look at the huge IT industry, which is now what has transformed India and continues to transform India, right? In 1990, if you really see what was happening, I would say PhDs were doing what MTechs could do. MTechs were doing what BTechs could do. BTechs were doing what today, that time, what a PhD was doing today, a class 12 student does today in India. That's the level of change which has happened. Now, what happened in between? They came up with, as the challenges grew, they came with standardized training methods. You'll find that whether you take medicine, and I remember a very famous cardiothoracic surgeon telling that when he finished MBBS from Calicut Medical College, he did his MBBS from somewhere else. He said, I knew nothing about treating people. Then I went and did my MD in internal medicine. I learned a little bit more, right? By the time I finished my DM cardiology, I starting to get an idea, right? It's only after so many years of actual practice that I think I'm getting a grip on what is there, right? So it's not something that takes time to learn. In Ayurveda, one challenge is that there are not enough clinical opportunities for doctors where doctors can go to good chikitsakans, right? The RAV scheme is there, but RAV scheme is more of a clinical setting, like consulting medicine setting, not too many hospitals. There are hospitals also there. So unless I learn to work in a hospital setting. Now, coming to the crux of the issue, the great news is that younger doctors are really amenable. So the key point I want to tell, whether you take engineering or medicine or Ayurveda, right? Modern medicine or Ayurveda, when you finish a system of education and come out, there is this whole thing of getting it all together, right? It's like an engineer, you may be an electronics engineer, but you ask him to repair a transistor radio, or an automobile engineer ask him to repair a car. A mechanic can do a better job initially, but once the automobile engineer learns properly, he can beat any mechanic because he's got both the theory and the practice. So what we need to do, and what is the good news here, is that young doctors coming out are bright, they're they understand, good doctors, right? The good colleges, good doctors. Within a month, you will see them completely shifting. I've seen doctors within 1 week, 2 weeks jumping to a new framework, very systematic framework. And that is what is so encouraging about Ayurveda, that young talent, very bright minds. And even when I say young, I'm telling in every generation, there are bright minds. But now, because the quality of talent coming to Ayurveda is superior, increasingly superior, you're getting the output also increasingly superior. So this is the direction in which, things are moving ahead. And I would say that the preparation of Ayurveda doctors to make them more scientifically oriented or more evidence-based oriented is a very doable project. You can actually train people systematically at large scale in a finishing school and put them there. But for all of this, you need an open mind. So the doctor who is very sick, what you need is confident young doctors. Also people willing to work hard, because there is no shortcut. People just want, that I got a degree and I should be getting it. I should be willing to go. And that is where I think there are some good role models in not the senior most generation, in the intermediate generations, right? Who are a good blend of the desire to learn, solid foundation in Ayurveda, good clinical instincts, all of this coming together. So I think we need more of those role models who can guide people in the practice of contemporary Ayurveda, or Ayurveda in the contemporary period. and
Yes,
they are
sir.
there.
There is one question which just popped up in the chat box.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on evidence-based Ayurveda leading to increased adoption of Ayurveda as an accepted system of medicine internationally as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think the world is seriously looking for answers to many of the long-held problems. Uh, People may not note this, but in 2000, which year was that? 2009, when Barack Obama came to power in the US, okay, he took oath in January of 2009. And within 15 days, he announced $1.5 billion for, comparative studies on multiple systems of medicine. Why? Because 18% of the US GDP goes towards healthcare. So they're looking for, is there any other system which can help? The tragedy is that energy medicine, maybe even Reiki was there, but Ayurveda was not there in the list of complementary systems. So as a nation, we have been extremely casual, remiss, right? And it is condemnable that after 75 years, we have to, but we should not blame others, because we ourselves, we Indians, and I don't say Ayurveda doctors or Ayurveda sector, it is we Indians who don't see that which is before us. And fortunately, in recent years, the people have seen the pros and cons, what works where, what doesn't work there, and that is why Ayurveda is finally finding its place. Ayurveda and yoga is coming there. The danger is that the present day practitioners don't dilute what Ayurveda is meant to be. And, instead, of course, Ayurveda cannot be killed by anybody, because Ayurveda survived so many years in spite of everything. So it will continue to survive in spite of people like me or you or anybody. But the fact is, or people like me and anybody else, but I'm trying to say, notwithstanding that, we owe it to Ayurveda to really practice it the way it was meant to be, with rigor, right? And that evidence-based Ayurveda for foreigners, right? That whole story of what we have to do. We have a nation of 1.3 billion people, right? We don't need to prove anything to anybody. It's a legal system of medicine. In Trichy, you can sit and treat all the entire population of Trichy, me in Bangalore, right? So if we are able to ensure, and while you have told that we have been 16, 17 years in the business of Chikitsa, still to come out with a randomized clinical trial, you need resources to do that. And I think sooner than later, I've told that within 2 to 3 years, outside 5 years, we're going to have very rigorous research coming out from the Ayurveda sector, right? And hopefully some in the audience here will be part of that.
So I think we are coming to the end of the questions session.
If anybody would like to ask some verbal questions, and whether Dr. Sheila, she had some points, and maybe some of you would also have some.
Sir, there was two other questions which had just come up. I'm sorry. Ayurvedic inhaler as a pump. Is there any Ayurvedic inhaler as a pump? And is it possible to reduce uric acid crystals in gout patient using transdermal patch drug delivery system using Ayurvedic medicine in it? I would also like to add to the audience here that we have shared the feedback link. Kindly fill this feedback link at the end of your session. Sir, would you like to answer those two questions?
No, so I'm not an expert specifically on the inhaler part. Maybe Nasya, for the particular thing which has come here, let me just read. For the Ayurvedic inhaler as a pump, I am not aware of it, but pardon my ignorance, I don't know. That's all. Maybe somebody else will have an answer. They could even put in the chat box. I'm not aware, but yeah. So whether we need a pump in Ayurveda, I'm not sure, because by the time you do the Purva Karma to the Nasya, and then you put the Nasya drops itself, it goes in straight away into this thing. But maybe in some cases it is required. And it's a very interesting question. I will also do some homework. The next question on transdermal patch. I think transdermal patches, as some of my colleagues, physician colleagues say, is a very exciting area. In the context of a transdermal patch to reduce gout uric acid crystals, I'm not too sure whether how effective that directly would be, but it will be very interesting to see. I would have thought that you would need to do a proper, panchakarma to cleanse the body, and maybe do some leech therapy localized to reduce the pain, in the localized removal of those uric acid crystals. But for a lasting cure, you need to do proper Shodhana Karma and this thing. But transdermal patches for Roga Shamana is definitely something which is worth evaluating.
So with that, I think
Mr. Sanjeev Kumar, as a first-year biotech student, is already thinking of innovating and trying to come out with a transdermal patch. So all the very best, Mr. Sanjeev.
If there are any more questions, would anybody like to ask any more questions?
I think Dr. TVN will have something to say, because a lot of interesting points
yes,
were told.
I was about to go get there if there are no more questions.
Sure.
So one of the senior most doctor in Ashtanga, as well as he is the medical superintendent, Dr. TVN Varier, is present here. I would ask Dr. TVN Varier to give a few words.
It's a very vast subject,
yes, please.
actually. Time is not enough for us to discuss all these things now. Even though, just
yes,
the problem is industry is depending upon the doctors.
Okay.
So, industry must produce the products must be doctor oriented.
Yeah. Correct.
The same time,
right.
doctor must be adjustable with the industry also.
Correct. That's true.
See, we can produce 300 or 400 products.
Correct.
Whether it is needed for the doctor is it's a question there.
It's a big challenge.
At the same time,
no doubt.
At the same time, whether to follow the previous, that is age-old type, ancient type of medicines, or the new type of medicines, there is a problem, because I have seen so many companies manufacturing. Hello.
Yes. Yes.
So many companies manufacturing without the combination is very different one, which is not at all acceptable for me. For me only, I can say.
Yeah. No, definitely.
It may be that is tested in hospital or somewhere.
Correct. But still, it is not acceptable. Yeah.
Illogical.
It's very
illogical.
Yes. So, see, already there are thousands or 10,000s or lakhs of formulations in our own text. The previous one already tested by our acharyas.
Correct.
Those things we are not ready to accept, and we have to manufacture a new one.
So,
it's a very difficult thought like that.
Correct. So, I think. Yes, sir. Actually, this particular point, in an earlier point when Mr. Shashi had brought up this thing about herbs being depleted, etc., I told exactly this point. The challenge would be you need to train, and I think it's very important that at some stage, and this is not easy because everybody is looking for patents. See, when we began AyurVAID 15, 17 years back, we really insisted that patents be kept to a minimum, right? Because unless you stick to, and then everybody would say, no, patients will not take the Kashta Ushadis, it's too difficult, taste and vomiting. We have had to relax a bit, right? But still we stick to that thing, because if a medicine is to be had in a way, in a particular time, that taste coming in the mouth, right? If I take a capsule, we are telling bioequivalence is established in the lab. But a capsule which goes into the stomach and opens there is different from a kashayam in the mouth, which is creating certain nerve stimulations in the head and then going out.
Yes, definitely.
So there are so many things which are there, and we cannot replicate that. So the point I'm making is we have to focus on doctors. I keep the core thing here is how do you strengthen the hands of young doctors and also the existing practicing doctors, because they have to survive. And they believe the shortcut is to do these proprietary patent medicines, nice packet, nice this thing. And they don't have the confidence to tell the patient, if you don't take with me, you go somewhere else. If you don't agree with what I'm doing, go to somebody else. I don't care. It's only when I get that adhikarigata, when I get to that point where I'm so confident, I say, I don't care. You listen to me or you go. Then the patient says, oh, this doctor, this Vaidyan means business, right? He's serious and he's doing it for me. So that integrity of that Vaidyan, that we can't, put an injection and give it to a younger doctor. So they have to work through the process and learn. And that is why I believe, but we have to be sticking to that path and give that confidence. So today, while we may have some doctors in certain markets where, as you say, a lot of competition, and the nearby doctor is giving cheap consultation with lot of nice patent syrups and other things, and here I'm giving a Kashtaushadhi, is a problem. But we have to keep believing that better outcomes, better consultation, right? If you do a better consultation with better medicine, so you have to create a new category of people who are science-based. And I think that tide will change, because what is tragic, Dr. TVN Varier, is today very bright minds are coming to Ayurveda, right? I understand in some states, the MBBS cutoff mark and the Ayurveda cutoff mark, there are people coming who could have got to MBBS or coming to Ayurveda by merit, not because some relation in Ayurveda or something. They come because they want Ayurveda, right? And such bright minds, they're not getting the right coaching, guidance, inspiration. And then later on, they're telling, why did I do this?
Yes.
Then they get into a government job and waste themselves. So there is a need that whether it is manufacturers or it is hospitals, this new vision that Ayurveda, you can be a very independent, strong knowledge, a person who's applying knowledge in a clinical situation and be making a good living. I often tell Dr. Girish, you're the youngest of the generation of doctors here, that the Ayurveda doctor in another 5-10 years will be much more well-placed than his modern medicine equivalent, if he's a good doctor.
Yes.
Right? He'll make more financially, he'll be better placed, status-wise, he'll be better placed, everything he'll be better placed. Yes, sir.
Here the question arises that whether to follow the Shuddha Ayurveda or not.
No, there's no question.
Yes,
should be no
we
question
have to follow
that.
that. The same day, another point, just I want to get a clarification, because 9 types of prescription, that is groups, we have to arrange and have a common idea. If we come to a conclusion, and can that be accepted to all the patients?
So, which is where I come to. So if you take a particular disease, right? You say, take Prameham, right? Prameham itself is a complete evolving disease, right? From the Purva Rupa stage itself, it is going to Vyakta, and then it is going to Upadrava, and then beyond, right?
Yes.
So the moment I get each of these things, and if without considering, and then that Prameha or Madhumeha patient is in addition having multiple comorbidities.
Yes.
So when I give a medicine for one thing with an underlying comorbidity which is directly contradicting this, right? So the medicine which I give could contradict some other vyadhi I have.
Yes.
So if I don't look at the person, so what I need to do, I need to understand the population of Madhumeha patients, figure out typically the Purva Rupa stage, right?
Yes.
Even there, do I have what type of Prakritis and Vikritis? Then in the, let's say, the Kabhaja Pramehi, then the Pittaja, Kabha Pittaja Pramehi, Vataja Pramehi, each stage, and then really Upadrava stage of Vata, right? Each of these stages with comorbidities, what are the common groups which are emerging in population today in India, in the geography? Then based on that, I am able to design those groups. So there is a way to do it, in my view. And then what you can do is within each of those homogeneous groups, you give one Chikitsa Paddhati. When I say Chikitsa Paddhati, it is Aharam, Viharam, Aushadam, Kriya. Depending on the Rogi Roga Avastha. Because the moment I look at medicine, I'm missing the piece. And today, because mental health is also a big issue, we need to think about the role of the Manas also in this thing. So, Aharam, Viharam, Manasika, Santvanam or Chikitsa, and then Aushadam, and then Kriya.
Okay, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I would also like to ask our MD, Mr.TVS Varier, to put in a few words.
Sure. Excellent thoughts to ponder. Rajiv, it is it's everything is available on the Google, or you can find it in the news. A lot of engineers do their management in the IIMs or famous colleges, and they become very good CEOs in very many MNCs and Indian MNCs as well as abroad MNCs.
Yes.
But this is the first time I'm seeing a guy who is an engineer who is coming into the Ayurveda field. I think probably as an engineer, you are trained to, the logical thinking process. Probably that is what trying to bring out the evidence-based Ayurveda and precision Ayurveda. The logical conclusion to, chikitsa, the clarity in treatment, the standardizing the protocols, etc., etc. And one size doesn't fit all. And, initially when I joined after banking career, joined with Shashi, we used to discuss on so many things, how to improve this. Of course, I am even after 11 years, I'm a novice to Ayurveda, I would say. Though I have lived in an Ayurvedic family. A square peg, a square peg is in a round hole is what I always used to feel when, we try to, like earlier you said, when we try to fit in all the, the allopathic norms into, the Ayurvedic chikitsa.
That's it.
And I think over a period of time, I've also realized there are a lot of, what do you call, clinical trials, and what you said is very, very hugely important. If we have to bring Ayurveda into the mainstream, we need to really think about this, bringing in a very standardized protocol. But I have seen many of my brothers and various other people, including my father, who have treated people. I wonder how this standardized protocol could be brought, because for one particular medicine, like you said, it is the Dasamudarsham can be used for so many medicines. Unlike in allopathy, you
exactly,
don't.
I agree. Which is why I come back. That's where, if I may comment.
Please go ahead.
So, incidentally, it's very nice to know that the S stands for Shulapani. It was not known till now. So, finally, I got the name. So, that's nice. So, what I would say that that's the beauty of Ayurveda. What I tell is the way it has been presented presented as a subjective siddhi, one strength of some, Ashtavaidyan, and or in South or some place, some magical thing. Whereas what we should have presented it always is, it is a Shastra, as any other Shastra, to be learned. If somebody has got the discipline to learn it, they will learn it properly and they can practice. That's a key message to give. Not that I am, because my great-grandfather was somebody, I become good. I am good only if I work hard to become a good doctor, not by any other thing, number one. Number two, what I would say, you talked about when you remember your father prescribing, I would only tell you one thing. He may not have told you this, but I think all the good Vaidyans, right, have got to a point where they are actually considering all these points. They don't articulate it, they don't tell you.
Exactly.
Okay. So he may not have told you because you are in a different field and different area. But if somebody had gone and engaged with him, this would have told you, oh, this rotas is there, this dosha dhatu, what is the, the Agni status or the Ama status. He would have told that. Right?
In fact, my brother.
So I think the practice, it's like a musician who's reached a particular level of capability, he will be able to break it down and tell you. He may not tell you the theory, but he's got it all in his head.
Reflex.
Accomplished with the musician.
Because exactly. I know one of my other brother, who is also Dr. T.V. Raman, he used to comment, some patient will come and tell he might be coming the third time, fourth time. Then he will keep telling, why there is no difference. He will shout at him, I know what this medicine does to a body. I am 100% sure that you have not been taking it as I have told. So you can go. So that's it. Like the doctor.
But today that can create problems, because you can have a consumer forum suit which can come against you telling I took.
Because you can't say that how I had the medicine.
Or you could go on social media.
Exactly. It has been really.
So in fact, that poses a very big problem. TVS, that poses a very big problem now for Ayurveda doctors, because unlike modern medicine, he can tell that, oh, for this I give you Aspro, for this I gave you whatever, Respiridol, whatever, Respiridin or whatever, right? I can say that. In Ayurveda, I give a medicine later on to establish how I came to that thing is a lot more complex. So Ayurveda doctors have it much more bigger challenge in that respect.
In fact, it was very good evening. Like I said, very excellent thoughts to ponder, and I'm sure this is going to bring in a lot of people to think, and as many as I think more than 50 people were there participating. I'm sure people will start thinking about whatever you have told. Thank you so much for participating.
Most welcome.
In Ashtanga as well.
And the theory about square peg in round hole, I just wanted to say what the square peg should do is just go and keep pushing. It'll create a nice round hole. And
over a period of time, it'll get in.
It'll get.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Girish.
Yes. So with that,
Dr. Sheila is here. I think we have, learned very esteemed Dr. Sheila.
Hello, Dr. Sheila. Would you like to add something?
Muted, Anna. She's unmuted.
Sir, good evening.
Namaste.
Very good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Very nice approach towards the evidence-based medicine. I am working with Vaijagnam Ayurveda Research Institute, and I have told about the Ashtanga practices.
Yes.
And I would like to inform you that we are having one finishing school, which will cover all the theoretical and practical approach towards to uplift the young minds.
Wow.
Then
Wonderful.
our Vaijagnam Ayurveda Research Institute is also aiming to provide process validation practices and reverse pharmacology approach in the mechanism of action of these drugs. The probable mechanism of action, that's why I have told you about this is systemic reviews and meta-analysis. We are trying to
are there enough studies for you to do a meta-analysis, Dr. Sheila?
Hello, sir. I'm not.
Are there enough studies? Are there enough research studies based on which you can do a meta-analysis today?
We are doing the systemic reviews because we are having this functional constipation. Functional constipation is having some symptoms or signs and symptoms which are related with our Arsha and Udavarta.
Okay.
The role of mind in that functional constipation. In Sahaja Arsha, there are mentioning of Manovigaras. So like that, so many research articles we've got for that.
But the studies based on which you do a meta-analysis also has to be robust.
We are planning to do the mechanism, that particular type of analysis.
You're trying to study the mechanism. But Dr. Sheila, maybe another time we should discuss, why are we going to reverse pharmacology?
Reverse pharmacology
what is the need?
Sir, it is
I'm just asking, really, do we have a need to do reverse pharmacology?
Sir, it is to...
So the mechanism, See, mechanism for a single drug, single molecule, something like that, you can go. But when I'm doing a polyherbal extract, multimodal in this thing, in reality, adalachiya.
Hello,
that's
sir.
Time for a different discussion. But I feel that reverse pharmacology in Ayurveda.
Is it relevant? I think that we got so many review articles regarding this Tila and this Tila Taila. Like that, so many activities are working. So many researchers are working on this kind of single drugs or herbal drugs.
Single drugs,
like
I understand. To some extent, you can do that, yes.
Yeah. When we combine it together, that is when we prepare it into a decoction, what will happen? Like that, we are trying to search on this. That's right.
It'll be excellent to have you on another talk like this to hear exactly the approach that you are adopting, Dr. Sheila, in this reverse pharmacology to Ayurveda. It will be very interesting to.
That's to know there's a mechanism of action, how it acts. Dr. Varier has told that so many hundreds of thousands of yogas with us. How can we replace one? How can we replace one large prescription to a small, precise prescription? That's why we are trying. Because Ayurveda practices are having so many very, very beautiful compositions with them.
Yes,
to
I'm aware
practice.
of that. Yes.
Okay.
I know
So
there are some.
I am on the way to describe what is happening here and what is the probable mechanism of action of these compositions. That's right.
Very interesting.
Maybe Dr. Sheila, you can highlight us enlighten us on this and in some other webinar where we can call you as a speaker.
It'll be very nice to hear you, Dr. Sheila.
No, I was just thinking on those lines because I was also planning to speak with Dr. Yadu from Vaidyaratnam. He is, I'm fortunate to have him as my classmate during my post-graduation. So anyways.
So I think we have extended our time quite significantly. Should we conclude now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we can.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila. Look forward to being in touch. And then
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila. And with that, we come to the end of this session. I would ask our Executive Director, Mr. Sasi Varier, to please give the vote of thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajiv, sir. So you have just opened the Pandora's box. So much of thinking to do, so much lying ahead of us. We have to work towards that, and that calls for intense training. I was wondering while you were talking how this kind of a training can be given to my own people, including Dr. Girish and other people who are there with us.
Yeah.
How do we give this kind of an approach or training to our people, our doctors, that they start practicing this in our own clinics? Now, this is my own challenge, but how do we do this at large to the larger audience in the Ayurvedic fraternity? This is a question where we have to take it seriously through some universities or somewhere where we have finishing schools, like you said. We need to do this rigorously, taking it up with the Ayush Ministry and do something about this, because this is very, very necessary for the way forward. Thank you very much for coming over and doing this to us.
Yeah.
It's been a fantastic session. Lots of thoughts processes going on in my mind right now.
Thank you very much.
Done a fantastic job today.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Girish, for a very interesting set of questions. And to all stakeholders, Mr. TVS, Mr. Sasi, thank you very much. And best wishes for K.S.Varier's Ashtanga Ayurvedics in the next, the remaining part of the century that you're trying to hit now very soon. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to thank everybody present here, all the audience, all members of the audience. I would also like to ask you to please come back to other sessions of webinars, which we continuously conduct every month at the fourth week of every month, the fourth Sunday, evening 6:30 p.m. We would keep you updated through the social media channels as well as your email IDs. So please continue to give support to us and give support to Ayurveda for spreading the awareness. So thank you all. Thank you. I would like to specially thank Mr. Rajiv Vasudevan, sir, for taking away so much time from his schedule for this session. Thank you, sir.